Hello? 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 Let's practice the escapism. That's a good point. My mind tried, and it partially succeeded. And I was like playing video games, and I have no idea if anybody's listening, so we're just talking to the void. Feel awkward. Um, so yeah, I got some very awkward first-hand experience in something and how stressful things can not be, but like how they feel to the mind. And it wasn't even just doing it, it was just knowing I have to do it, which is about the practice that I had to go through the past days when I wasn't streaming, besides doing the responsibility things and cleaning my apartment and going shopping and stuff. It like I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I knew I had to. And different speculations in my brain and such. Um, it was quite horrific. It was quite horrific. Usually things wouldn't stress me out this much, so it was a kind of surprise that it actually felt like my mind was gone. Like it was and off it went because it didn't want to deal with this kind of bullshit. And like basically I deal with this every day, right? Like repeat, 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 and analyze, and it's like pure stressful grind as far as I can tell. And then I make this leap, and it's like insane how good I actually am, and then I have to scale this back. It's like I have this really crazy huge mountain of stuff and things, and I'm looking at the tiniest grain of pebble of something. It's like the tiniest stone that you can pick up, and I have to say, like, I gotta analyze this thing. I know I have a huge mountain of riches and stuff and things, but I can't really, I gotta feel indifferent about this. So ultimately, it is marvelous. It is so marvelous, and in a way, if I have no idea how it actually feels to other people, but I know how easy it is to just escape from yourself, from everything you want to do, because it's just like I can't really explain how other people would actually perceive these things. But when there is something you want or you want to do and you want to really get into things, but you know you're not doing it on your own. I mean, I had things that I really wanted and I didn't get there when I noticed that I just wanted them. It's like it reminds me of myself. It reminds me of Pommeline when you really know you want it, but actually doing this, it's like you can't because for whatever reasons. Like it's like basically, why don't more people sit down in school and actually pay attention? Why do kids always go about attention deficit and all of this stuff? Like it's not like we train our brain or we train our mind to actually pay the fuck attention to things. Excuse the language, but I gotta, yeah, so that's right. It's not like we practice to be disciplined and to be mindful. We just practice bullshit. And we practice escaping, and we practice not thinking about things. We practice, you know, what is the contrary, the opposite of discipline? That is what we practice. And before we actually get to the point where we realize we have focus and we have attention, we notice that we don't. Because this is like we have the kids, so we have us growing up from like 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 to like 15, and then the kid is like hyperactive and it's like can't concentrate, and it's like it got all these ADHD, DHDs, and ADBs, and attention deficit disorders and syndromes and yada yada yada, considering that the mind was exposed to everything else but discipline and paying attention. Like It's like you're bombarded with stimuli, and all your mind can do is follow. You follow, instead of actually latching onto something and saying that is it. Like, I want to stick with this. Yeah. So how can we surprise to not have something when we actually not done a thing to have it, right? So weird. So weird. The blindness of the human eye, brain, consciousness, stuff. I suppose, in a way, after growing up and such, you have your image of what it's like to be human, and you have your image of what it is to be human. Right? It's, all the rants, it's already going too deep. Too much rant, too much philosophy. So back to what stressed me out so much. So basically, just um, I suppose it has different kind of um, effects on my brain, or different things to do different things because different reasons and different conditionings or different situations. So I had to look at eyes again. Eyes from the front. And how to manipulate the entire structure. This is the face. The face can actually focus down, like look down, or it can look up. That will change the facial structure that is in place in a certain way. Foreshortening is happening. There is a kind of shortening of shapes due to, let's say, what is it? The positioning that changes, and this is only something we have in 3D rotation. When, for example, the face is normal looking straight, you have a very particular space between eye and eyebrow. That is what is changing. When the eye is tilting forward, that is the space that becomes very small. So that the eyebrow, it looks like the eyebrow is coming from the eyes, and this is like, the difference is what is really happening in my thing when the face is looking left, rotating right, and I'm drawing very garbage arrows there. And I did this with 2 lines. It was like this and this for the one side, and I had my symmetry, and it was this and this for the other side. Like, I actually, I partially practiced escaping because holy shit, I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do this, and that is why I didn't stream. I knew I had to do this, and I had to actually rescue myself partially, which means I had Black Desert Online in the background, and the moment I turned it on, it was like, there's the fresh breeze of wind. It was like, oh yeah, let's go. It was like completely awkward because I was basically AFK fishing. And it's like it gives you a mini game like every 90 seconds or something. So I was drawing, and then going over to my mini game to like not feel the stress, to like completely like blow my own mind empty, because whatever I had in my brain at that time was causing stress. And this is like what you see now. And I have done actual practice on paper, pen and paper, so that when I actually had the fish, I could go to my minigame and collect the fish, and then, do some grinding while I do some other grinding. So I did grind through some drawing practice, and I like it never felt this heavy in a way. And I would have my own speculations because I can't just like be exposed to the stress and not think about this. It's like it's accepting things as normal. It's not something I can do. So me sitting there completely stressed, and I can assume I have burnout, but it is not something. It's not an opinion I can accept. So I sat there, right? And I realized that it's like so fucked up, and it's like, okay, you can't really stream, but you gotta still keep doing things. A partial reason why I didn't want to stream is like I had no real desire to subject you guys to me just doing this all day. Like it's I didn't feel like talking during this kind of stuff because it was just boring. Like I'm using two lines. Again, we go back to this, right? I use these two lines that actually they represent part of the eye structure. When the face is looking up and down and rotating left and right, this is the entire structure that is changing. It is changing shape, it is changing location, it is changing angles. I had to find out in which way does this structure change when the face is turning, tilting, rotating, up and down, looking left and right. Deep breath. What's up, catnips? Oh, things. Geransom. Geransom. Copio, what's up? How things? How do you do art these days? I'm motivated. Discipline. Discipline is the key, really. I've been so inactive because of video games. I mean, discipline. Discipline is the only way. And for me, it comes from like it's part of what I practice. It's practicing. Remember how much you want this. If you don't refresh your desires in your brain, know how much you want it. All you really do is you refresh what you don't want. And this is like you repeat the thought. It's like, oh, I feel bad, oh, I feel bad, oh, I'm stressed, oh, I'm stressed, oh, I'm stressed. It's like a cycle, and you gotta break out of the cycle, and that is you gotta I analyze. I always analyze. No matter how stressed I am, no matter how depressed and sad and whatever, when life is burning, I still analyze. I analyze myself because it is my life, it is my environment, right? It is not your environment, so you have no reason to analyze it for me, but I gotta do this. And something I started getting into early in life. It's not like I just picked it up whenever I felt like after like I was 30 years old or something. It's something that I definitely practiced early on, so it became easy over time to no matter how fucked up life gets, right? No matter how shit you are, no matter how bad I actually feel, I can still continue to like, perform in some kind of way, even if it is just performing for me. I don't need to work a job. I don't need to like talk to people in my job, for extended amount of time because I work in retail or some kind of support tech, Discipline is really the key. There's no real laziness and unmotivated. This is precisely when you have to remind yourself how much you want it. Otherwise, your mind will be very good in, let's say, being imprinted. You tell your mind what is going on, and then it's like you tell. It's like, when does the thought become reality? And I feel like I'm lazy. My mind is telling me I'm lazy. And there's a difference between, am I telling myself, or is the thought, is the notion of being lazy and unmotivated actually coming from somewhere else? And that too is where whatever you tell the mind, your mind will repeat. If you practice discipline, your mind will be disciplined. If you practice laziness, it will give you laziness. Because, like, how could it not? How could it give you anything else that you didn't really practice and put in your mind? So, how did I get the discipline that I have? But eventually, I had to strap myself and my mind, I had to strap my mind to a chair, right? And force feed it basically my desires. That involved drawing and not escapism because lazy and lack of motivation. That's who brings the discipline. Nothing works without discipline. When it comes to this in particular, it's not like I don't really want to do this, but I want to do this. I need to do this. I have to do this. Even though I want to draw crazy stuff like robots and faces and ladies and bodies and bikinis and boobs and legs and all the good stuff, I suddenly end up in a place where I have to look at two lines and how they work. Like it's not just this, right? But pretend you actually understand how these two lines exist in a physical 3D space. That is what I have to go through. Because the thing is representing a 3D structure that is then changing if it is rotating up or down or left and right, and that brings in the change, right? Between my face looking up and down and left and right. The face has like a structure of 500 plus different lines and arrangements. It's like something like this, right? It is a highly complex structure. The simplicity of the structure is still there is one thing and there's two things. And these are the things that I built my structure on, just like the jaw and the chin is highly complex, but I have my symmetry, and then I have these compartments, and I have one, two, three things that my entire complexity is based on. So, in a way, I have a complex thing, which is the circle or the sphere. And I would break this down by basically cutting this in half, horizontally and vertically, and then I have basically one line that covers 90 degrees, and I can draw this weird looking square and say this is representing all the complexity of the sphere, which is like what? So this is a spherical volume. It is a simplified spherical volume. But how does it really work? Unless again, this is where I train my brain to actually comprehend how this would work. So that I'm representing a simple, rather very complex eye structure with two lines. That is like my basis, and it makes complete sense. And still, to really figure out all these complex changes that happen when the face is in foreshortening and rotating and deformed and distorted and stuff and things, I have to look at these two lines again. Like before I'm able to deform all this complexity, before I'm able to draw this complexity, I have to break it down to the most fundamental thing, which ultimately is one line. It's one line times two, maybe three, because one goes up from the tear duct. This is going across. This goes up. This goes across, and we have the third one, which is usually the eyelash. One is a one. That is a one. That's a two, and that's three. That is the basis of my structure. Every piece, one, two, three. So the one piece, the one single unit of information, is dependent on length. It can be shorter, it can be longer, and it is dependent on angles. So it can have a long straight angle, it can go down, and it can go up in a certain kind of way, right? Eyes don't really go too crazy, and I'm still looking between cartoon style simplified eyes, more realistic, equals more definition in your structure. It basically means more lines, right? So even when I have the most complex arc, 180-degree arc, like you have the potato circle, right? You cut this in two, and I have one, two, three elements that cover all the roundness and all the complexity. So whenever I have a curve and I say I'm drawing the eye, how do you think I'm structurizing this so that it actually makes sense? And this is like I have to find a way for my mind, for my brain to pierce through this, because the mission is I want to learn this. I want to be good at drawing eyes. I want to be good at drawing heads. And then it's all up to you how you get there. Basically, actually, and only drawing from reference and copying reference. So just drawing from reference is fine and it gets you very far, but it's not really how my brain works, because it has to make sense, like really down to the bone. And this again is where I fall back to where I have the most complex structure that is then simplified in either the box or the weird looking square, because there is still the basic information is in there, right? Like the line can still cover, like, I don't know. It's weird to explain, and it totally makes sense because I practiced and trained my brain to make sense of things this way. And so whatever I would draw, it is made up from lines. So it's something that has to ultimately sink in, right? Because it's all about how proficient and how precise are you in arranging these elements that you put on paper. And ultimately, I classify this as a line that is again then based on angle. It's the same line, different angle. Longer line, same angle, right? Same line, different angle. So I can rotate and do things and point, and then I can take this one and I can move this over. Take the same line, rotate this, make it longer, right? And if I do this carefully, I'm definitely constructing an eye, just for the sake of things. So this gotta be shorter. So I have this weird looking eyelash that definitely looks like a little thing, but still, it's 1, 2, 3. So going back to where I had to bring this is, how does this basic structure change? 1, 2, 3. Basically, so no, I gotta count this properly. I worked with the 1 and 2. The 3 is a kind of special fella because it is the eyelash. Otherwise, you can have 1, 2, 3 goes down and builds the half circle. For the eyes, it is more appropriate to keep this in mind. The eye have a different structure, and the eyes are not completely half circle, so they still have these, in my brain, different compartments or different elements. It's not just like, look, this is the eyelid, and it is the eyelid. Of course it is the eyelid, right? I would separate this by what is this thing doing, what is the form doing, what is the line doing, and on my canvas the line goes up, the line goes across, and then it goes down. This is what you have on your 2D canvas space. In my 3D space, this is where things get funky because I have X and I have okay, this is already wrong because I should start this. I have my X and I have my Y and I have my Z axis. I can bring this thing into this kind of structurizing, where I don't say, I am not only saying the line goes up and across and down, but I can say that the line starts at this corner and then it actually goes back and then it goes across, and when it goes down it still goes back. So there is this point lines up with Y in the middle, this point lines up with the same thing, but there is a depth, right? That is not visible when I just look at this, because again I have 2D space and I have my 1, 2, 3. When I look at these intersecting points, and that is just another way how I think so that I actually make sense of what I'm seeing, because on my 2D space, that is the image that I observe is always flat. So this goes up and down and back, right? It goes 2D space. This is not appropriate for the eye, because when I look at the eye carefully from the side, from the profile, I would see the eyeball and I see the eyelid and I see something like this. And that means basically I see this line. And I don't see the tear duct. I could have the tear duct, but it doesn't make sense. So the nose would go this way and I have my eyelashes. This line has to be this one, because it goes down, right? So in the middle I have my eye. But what it does is basically it goes back, more like this one, right? This is the triangle that I see. And this is the same triangle. And it's like the line that I draw does not exist on a 2D space, but it does actually indeed represent 3-dimensional thing. So it has to be classified and structurized into X, Y, Z, as opposed to it goes up and across and down, so that I understand how my structure is doing its thing. Because in the change of like me rotating my eye or looking down, looking up, looking left, looking right, the structure would change. And it suddenly becomes shorter. It's like it goes up more, but it still has to do something. And that too, it doesn't just work on my 2D space, but it actually represents a change in my 3D space, where it goes up and across and down, and still it does something else, right? So I have my real 3D space. So it goes up, it goes across, and it goes down, and this is faulty. It's flawed. So it does go up, but then it goes back in space. and then it goes down. So if I really want to figure out how these things line up, there's a guy who does this. To make it look like they are in space, I have to know where they intersect. And you can see, like, the first line is my 2D space. Everything else is my 3D space. And what is happening is that the front plane of my eye is actually standing up from the ground plane. It is not located always on the front. It goes up and down, blah, right? It goes up and it goes across and then it goes down. And in between, I would have this weird looking thing, but it does indeed go into the space. And there's a kind of difference in, like, at first this is like the weirdest stuff, especially if you've never drawn in 3D or thought in 3D. And this is not just me trying to think in 3D, but I'm trying to, like, eat it up. I have to chew this, I have to swallow this, and I have to, like, really take it in because I need to have the 3Dness. And this is like whatever I put on paper is classified into XYZ space because it is representative of something 3D. And then I have to classify this. It's like structurizing this in XYZ space on my canvas. And on top of things, how does it change when it's actually rotated or tilted or stuff and things? And overall, it's crazy, and it's like I didn't really age, but the stress that it was so weird. It was so weird, the amount of stress that I felt because of this. Yeah. So this is basically like part of the entire magic. Every line, single line, has to be carefully placed and carefully structured on my canvas and in this 3D space, so that it's like how much control do you want to have? And here's the thing. Between standing on ice, like ice hockey people, right? You can stand on ice with your shoes and have a hard time getting across. And then, with the right skills, you understand that you need the blades, like the ice skates. And if you still don't know how to move, you will fall on your face and hurt yourself. And then the question is, how much control do you need? How much control do you want? Is what hashtag? This is from Jim Lee. He hosts me. I know that Jim Lee hosts me, which is crazy. Which is crazy. What's up, Jim Lee? You're probably not listening, but I love you. Love your work. I went through my comic book stack. I have like 20, 22, 25-year-old comic books, and it's quite insane how much they actually imprinted my brain when I was like 13, 14 years old, and I went to the comic book stores, um, and I saw these covers and like all this marvelous anatomy detail and stuff and things. So I'm like, wow, you know. So, and I bought comics for the artworks. I didn't buy them for the stories. I did. So anyway, this is like, in a way, this is the kind of thinking that keeps me away from getting lost. Whatever problem I have, I can really dissect things into their bits and pieces. And I should say, thank you, Shape Smith, for the sub. Much appreciated. I sent you a duck. Something else about angles and stuff. A general fixing mistakes when I draw, whatever I draw, even figure drawings. And I would notice mistakes in my, for example, anatomy. Guess what I look at? Because it fundamentally, ultimately breaks it down. This is like when you look at this and you say, okay, you see what you think you see, which is like, I see arms and legs, and there is a figure, and there is pose, and there's hands and fingers. It is all being represented by this thing, which in its graphical nature is a line. I call this a line. Depending on the line's orientation, I can say it is an arrow, and it can be defined by angle. We have names for this because we call it horizontal. We have names for this because we call it vertical. Why do we even give it names? But we do it because it makes sense. In mathematics, we have crazy stuff and things going on, and I don't even want to get in there. But still, I can say this is my 0 degrees, this is my 90 degrees. And everything else happens in between. So again, angles make sense because there is something happening for the surface. So basically, when I rotate a box, right, I can tilt the box and I suddenly change it like 90 degrees. My line, every single line is changing 90 degrees, right? And even though you say you see the box, right, and you do indeed see the box. What's up, artillery? I saw you. I saw you. And how things? How's the art going? So the box is represented through its lines. Language, line, is represented through its lines, which is weird. We can dissect the entire alphabet, and it doesn't even make sense anymore because, like, lines are magic. Depending on how you arrange lines, it's like you basically, it's like you build a house of cards, right? You build a house of cards in a certain way. If you stack lines a certain way together, you make language. If you stack certain lines together a different way to not make language, you make something else. And this is really weird because you represent 3D space on a 2D surface by carefully connecting lines and angle states. Lines, different angles, make 3D space. And again, this is it. In a way, it has to sink in because at first it's like super logical, right? But it builds on working with the illusion. So this is what I studied, right? How do I arrange my lines to create the 3D, so that I could arrange my lines to create the stuff. I'm from Germany, yes. Das Gute. Artillery. I looked into this very recently. I looked into places that can print books, different pages, black and white for art stuff, depending on stuff and things. I looked into selling with Amazon because I don't want to package all the books and send them out on my own manually. So either having a website that does it or just Amazon would be, I mean, people buy from Amazon all day, right? And even though it may like doing it manually may give me more profits in the end, but I don't really want to do all the labor. So I pay somebody else to do the labor. Which is like, it's like so normal, right? I can't produce my own posters because I don't have a super size photo printer. So does 3D Total make physical books? And the thing is, I'm in Germany, so I gotta look into no, Kickstarter is not my thing. The thing about Kickstarter, if you have no community, if nobody knows who you are, you can have your project and it's gonna fail on Kickstarter. Kickstarter, another issue with me and things like Kickstarter is putting things in words. As good as I am with the teaching, putting it in writing, including in English, like I'm German. I suck at English. Written English is the worst. On top of having dyslexia, I can't. And it wouldn't work. Like Kickstarter is not the thing. Besides, I'm a nobody. So if a nobody comes along and says I want to make the best teaching book because I know my shit, if I have nothing to prove this, it's not gonna work. Because I'm a nobody. I have no credentials. I've not worked in the industry. There are so many million people that have worked in the industry and they make books and people flock to them because they believe he knows. But yeah, I have my own opinions. So it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Besides the fact, if I want to write a book, that would mean I have to spend significant amounts of time to the writing. I may need to hire an editor so that I can talk to somebody and he writes for me. He puts it into words, and there are professional people that do this. So that I have other things to do, for example, still earning money and making art, because I am not a writer. I can't write words, especially in English. So that means I have to hire somebody. And then again, I would like to have the book be ready to be completely ready in a year or two, which means that is a everyday kind of thing. And that still means I would need to have a serious amount of money and basically funding ready for the book, and that means like 60K, 100K, and that is just like it's so far away thinking about this to actually spend the time. Time is money, right? So I have to work to pay rent and get funding to hire an editor and write a book. So it doesn't work when you're nobody. It doesn't work in my current state, so it's still far away. It's like a decade away. Yeah, the small things would be the start. Having like 1, 2, 3, 5 pages written. That is still, and still it's very hard for myself because dyslexia. Like it's seriously writing stuff, writing too much is stressing out my brain for reasons. I'm old. I'm not really old, but I'm old, kind of old enough. If it's something I could do on my own, it would be different. Like I would spend writing every day before I go to sleep 1, 2, 3 hours. It still doesn't work. Like I may should actually start it this way, right? So that a professional guy can go in with my help and put it in a comprehensive kind of string of thoughts and words. I always say I'm old. I'm not really old. I'm beyond 30. 30 means you're old. I'm old. I felt old when I was 25. So, so what? So what? Here's a dream. Here's a dream. Here's a real dream. So let's say I would I would get my name out in the right places where people realize he wants to make a book and they would help me so that it's maybe shared profit, shared cost, shared something, but they would actually help because they see the substance, right? And that would be really the best way. So, yeah, so it's a weird thing. It's, but it should happen. Let's say if yeah, it has to be in writing. Can't work any other way. I am old. I'm old. I'm old. And let's say not only from like we all go through some experiences where we say we've aged, and I've gone through some experiences where I like everything went serious and sincere and like when you think about having fun in comedy, it was like completely drowned because holy shit, the stuff that you just went through, and you age, you feel like you age mentally in those moments. And on top of the amount of thinking and analyzing that I do, and like it could feed 2 lifetimes. It could actually feed 2 lifetimes. because I don't really do many other things, right? I do my art, I do my necessities and requirements and adulting and responsibilities if I can. Otherwise, I art and draw, like to the point of analyzing, creating understanding and knowledge and wisdom and personal truth and my own truth to help me keep on living or make things easier, recondition my brain. They work with no unknown artists in theater. Oh, awesome, awesome. I remember 3D Total from like years ago when they had all these 3D courses, but I don't think I ever went there. I shall remember. I shall definitely remember. Yeah, writing a book is work and expensive, so I know that much. Yeah, life expectancy goes up, my laziness goes up too. On top of me not doing any sport, I don't really do much exercise. Like I gotta spend time drawing. That means I'm sitting. That means my life expectancy is. I gotta, I gotta prepare. I'm already prepared. So, like again, that makes me old. Like that makes me seriously old, and I don't. It would. I can only like blame my mind partially about my situation in life. Sometimes it's not that pleasant, and I think about life. So I think about death. And then I think about how old I am, which I'm not that old, right? And still thinking about death, or dying, or just the circle of life in my age is not that normal. It's not that common. And maybe it's because I'm terrible at distracting myself because my mind is awake and it constantly nags, and I have to find ways to fulfill my brain and not just fill it with distraction, but actually gotta be pleased and happy and enjoy things. That is where I know I can. It's so easy to escape, and I could just not stream today and play video games. And it doesn't work for me, and that too is discipline, and I have to, you know, go through by any means. That is, it's, in a way, part of the life thing because you can't escape, and like people try to escape, but it's you got to go through. There's no other way, And then depending on how you are, where you are, your life, your mind, your emotional state, you gotta find ways to make it easier. And then it doesn't matter if you have to go through depression or just, you know, life, whatever life throws at you, if you have to go through drawing, because whatever you want to achieve in life, you have to go through. Like by any fucking means, it's you gotta serve yourself in this case. It's weird, right? And yeah, me learning how to draw is the omega, and then somewhere down the line is making money. But making money is a huge driving force in society because if you got to be somebody, so you got to make money. If you don't make money, you're nobody, and then you can't buy things, and got to have things to be somebody, and then you got to buy things, and I can't buy things to be somebody. That still drives me to being a recluse because I have to draw like a crazy person. It's still stress. And again, like I gotta go through this, and on top of this, I have to find ways to make the stress less stressful. That means I can't change things because I gotta go through, and the only thing I can change is my perspective. And sometimes that includes thinking about things you don't want to think about, including hard things, and like it takes time to produce any sort of knowledge, any sort of skill, any sort of anything really. And sometimes you have no idea how long it will actually take to get through. And that is something I think, like, the experience that I had the other days, 2 days ago, with the stress and just going through this, the analyzing these two states. Like, even right now, it's like, holy cow. It's like such a weight. I can draw this. I can draw this. I can draw this, right? This is like me. It's supposed to be this. And on my back is this huge boulder, and it's like crushing my brain. And it's like now, but I know what it is, right? I know what I want, and it only exists because I want this. If I didn't want this, it wouldn't exist, right? And if I if I if I put in like video game skills, right, it wouldn't be. It's not a weight, right? Like, it doesn't work like this. So, and still, I can't really imagine how it does feel for other people when they have wishes and dreams and desires, and then basically all the access points are locked and sealed, because how do you learn how to make art if you have never ever dipped in, right? And it's like, you want to learn this, but it's all the desert and there's no oasis. I can't even go with this. Like, it's not a magnificent meaninglessness for the normal, common, average human mind. Yeah, life has no meaning because, like, please, please, I can string thoughts together for my own self where, like, the marvelousness, the magnificence of consciousness. How could that exist if it had no meaning? That it is contradictory in itself. Especially if we then go into the marvels that the human mind holds into artificial intelligence, and presumably a intelligence that is self-aware. Like, our consciousness is self-aware, right? And when it comes to actually creating this artificial intelligence that is self-aware, like, everybody goes crazy. The thing is, we have it. We have a, by nature, programmed, perfect, self-aware intelligence, consciousness, awake right now. And it's like the most normal thing, and it's like nobody is aware, nobody sees it, nobody knows it, and it's like, holy crap. Yeah. It's, yeah, it's weird. I can remember how it was in the magnificence, meaninglessness that was once my life. I didn't think I was normal. I was into video games. I was into girls. I was not into art. I was just into whatever comes along, I guess. Didn't have much drive. I was sucking in school. Didn't have many friends. Wasn't invited to all the parties. Didn't really enjoy parties. It was more about sex, drugs, rock and roll, and I was there like just coasting in between, knowing that is not for me. I didn't have anything that was for me, but I knew sex, drugs, rock and roll was not it. So I eventually ended up still being the recluse, but I eventually realized what was for me. And still, you can always argue about life and meaning, stuff and things. And then again, if you really want to know, right, it's like it's a string of thought that would start in the now. And if you really want to know, it is not something that you could stop, and it goes on for the next 10 years. Because it has meaning. If it does indeed have meaning. It's weird. Life with a human consciousness is a weird thing. And then you can have notions like belief. You believe it to be true. You believe it has meaning. In the end, you can never know. But then again, like, I am aware. I know I am aware, therefore I exist. Holy shit. How did I end up there? How did I end up in the now being aware of myself? What is the meaning of this? There is a purpose, otherwise it wouldn't happen. Even if it's just for me, so that I realize I indeed exist. And then again, does it have meaning at all? Like, if life didn't have a meaning, and then again, we can always imply that it is the meaning of life as a human is to buy things. You gotta work, gotta buy, make a family, get a dog, build a house, get mortgage, make debt, so your bankers will love you, pay off the debt all your life, and then you die. And if the meaning, it's not really in the accumulation of things. And then again, we can always, we believe in whatever has the meaning. Money has meaning to some people. Things and stuff has meaning to people. Like, it's not like I want to lose everything I have, but if it comes to things, what could I do? And still, things don't tell me who I am. But there are people that need things. Because image, right? If you look at other people, they have their image. That is the image that they present to you. You present your image. Your image, it's weird, right? But it includes the earrings, the lipsticks, it includes the t-shirts, the jackets, the pants, the shoes, the cell phones that we wear, the hats, the haircut, the bearded grooming, and all of this kind of stuff. It even includes if we choose glasses with square frames, or if we go with the roundness, or if we go with the super slim. Like, it all builds up, right? And there are people that look for brands because the brand and the company is fancy, and then you have people that go for the Gucci's, and they go with the Pradas, and I don't even know the names, and they go with the what was popular in the late 90s, Hilfiger, and I don't even know, like, these double H super puffy jacket. I don't even know what this was. Was it Hilfiger? I have no idea. Tommy Hilfiger? I have no idea. So, image, right? Because then again, if you stand in front of somebody and you wear a police uniform, you present the image of authority. If you stand in front of them as a bum with no pants and beard and you're drooling, that is your image. And now you would see that it is indeed influencing us in how we react. And then if there's somebody in front of us that wears all the nice things, I know he got the money. I don't know if he's working, if he's rich, or if he actually makes debt and has a lot of credit to pay. So, it's, image is everything, right? Not really. It is indeed fascinating to perceive yourself as, at least for yourself, you are the entity in this body. You are part of your body, but you are not your body. I don't mind quality. I know for some things you pay for the quality. That is a normal thing. I don't necessarily need to buy the best brands, but I know it's a thing. Like, and even if it's just for the aesthetics, like, we go with the aesthetics. And even though we are not aware, like, I would choose certain shoes over certain other shoes. If I look at the shoes that the usual people wear in my age, like, holy fuck, are they ugly, right? And it's like complete leather and they cost like 350 euros. and it's like business shoes that you wear in the office and such. And like, I have sport shoes. I am a 35-year-old guy. I have jeans, and I have shoes that I would wear to go skateboarding because I like them. Right? I don't need to feel like some yuppie that works in the office. I'm not representing my age because I have to feel mature, so I can't wear like sneakers and Converse and that kind of stuff. And like, look at people's shoes. Just observe people's shoes, and it is partially hilarious, including including the aesthetics of bright neon, yellow, green neon shoes. And people like this kind of stuff. Why do they like this kind of stuff? Because they like it, so it is taste, and that means somewhere down the line it is the aesthetic. We all go by aesthetic. I like the aesthetic of jeans. I may not like the aesthetic of suits. I don't mind suits. I can't pay for suits because they are so expensive, and if I want to have a really good suit, I gotta dig deep into my pocket. It definitely reminds me, I gotta buy some jeans. Gotta get some new jeans. Let's say the last time I was buying jeans, because I had to buy jeans, 8 years ago. So I do have a crazy amount of jeans compared to the amount of t-shirts that I have. But still, they're old. I can agree on Flux, yeah, but people didn't always work 40 hours. And the thing is, let's say I realized that I want to draw when I was 25. I didn't feel like it when I was 15. It wasn't in my mind. It wasn't in my brain. So I had other things to do, but it wasn't working for 40 hours. And still, I could have made it work. And still, at the time, I was enough. I didn't really have all the time, but I still wanted this. It is easy to just go along, and especially when you work the 40 hours. Like, it comes down to the desire and how much you really want it. If you want it enough, you will get it. And if you want to get laid, you will get laid, right? There are many things that the male mind will conjure up if they really want it, and it can't be it. But it's easy to just flop on the couch instead of going to work. Because when I'm done with work, I continue to work. That is because I want to. It's not like I want to do other things. I do want to do other things, but in the present moment, the best thing I can do is keep going. And sometimes I'm human, and then I did end up in playing a lot of like Desert Online, just fishing while I grinded through the stupid things and drawing. Like, it was basically like this. I paid attention to my first line, which had to be very horizontal or vertically. It's vertical, right? So it can tilt over just slightly away from being vertical. So it's like a very, very weird line. So I have two of those, right? And then I do this and this and this, and I go up and I go across. And then I do this one and this one. And I try to maintain the symmetry. I add the ears, I add the nose, and I figure out, how do I attach eyebrows? And what are the key points that really come into play when the face is looking down, up, left, or right? Because certain things will start to shift. We have foreshortening going on. Certain angles will change. And that is like, it's already creeping into my bones. I just copy this. Can go through it step by step. It's already stressing out my brain. I have no idea why. Usually it doesn't happen like this, and maybe there's something else behind it, and I will definitely analyze it some more. So, copy this. So angles can change. The first, this is like the main structure is this is one, this is part two. Part 1 and 2 change independently. Part 2 can always remain the same. Number 1 can be more flat. It can be more straight. It can be more long. It can be more short. These are the different states that I can play around with. Whilst number 2 is still the same. On top of this, I can have state piece number 2 can change. It can actually go down. It can go up and then have a neck, like a weird looking handle that goes then down. It can't really go up too much because that is not natural to the eye, but it can still go up a significant amount and then just curve down. On top of this, these are basically the states that it can go through when the thing is being rotated left, right, or up and down. I'm not just practicing. I have hard props to shade without getting around. To shade without getting around lines. Any tips to improve the technique shading with onliners? What are you even saying? You want to shade roundness with straight lines. The roundness comes from I use straight lines. I can't use curves because this is the main curve that I have to run across the cylinder. I can't do this performance very accurately because the motion through my arm, like my arm has a physical limitation. Doing this clean and precise and accurate is easy compared to doing this precise and accurate. So I have this roundness and I cut this into pieces and these become my planes. So that I have this curve, but it is structured into these angles and straight lines. It is still building the roundness, step by step by step. That is what is happening. That is how I work. I have the curve. I cut this into pieces. Because I can only go so much with the curves. I can't have this too much because that is very difficult. I sometimes use curved lines because that is something I got into over the years of practicing this. You will know what curves to use to be more efficient and effective, but know how to build and structurize your curvature, your form, and your roundness like this, step by step. So even the forehead. You know the forehead is more spherical than anything else. Look, I have these compartments for my forehead. And then look at this angle carefully, how it is changing step by step to give you this impression. And that is indeed how the magic works. Look at everything and you see this marvelous head face, see 3D thing, and it looks like amazing. Look at every piece individually. And you see how the magic actually unfolds because you have to change angles. Because the surface is not flat straight like the plane is flat straight. Like this is the box. This is the flat surface. Again, look at the top line. If you know it is round, it has to go round. And then this one has to go round. And if you then connect these, you have something that is almost like a half cylinder. If you then know it is also going around this way, right? It is completely round. So every line of this has to have this weird looking curve. But still, this is very difficult. But it's just another step. But still, you look at the individual pieces and simplify the curvature. That is the magic. Okay, so let's go back to this one. So different states for eyes, right? And I had to go through a couple of just probably like 50, 150 different studies, like just step by step. But then again, depending on the style and what kind of eye structure I have, more realistic means that bracket number 1 is more short. Bracket number 2 goes across. More realistic is the short pupil, the small pupil. The big pupil would make it easier to have bracket number 1 be longer so that you can fit in a bigger pupil. And still, this is based on a very similar structure between 1 and 2. And they don't even change angles or differences that much. They, like, number 1 becomes short, and it's still representing the entire style spectrum between realism and cartoon. If I want to go more simple, all I have is this and this, and I have a very simple face, and I have very simple eyes, and it is very simple. If I then increase the complexity of my structure, I can, like, it's somewhat easy to just go all the way realistic, and I know I have this, and I have maybe eyelashes, and then maybe I have just this, but otherwise I have a pupil, like the black stuff, depending on the size. And then again, depending on the complexity and how close does it get to, this is supposed to be a realistic, because an eye that is this big is not realistic. And we all know this, right? So it has the realistic eye has a very specific structure between the 1 and 2, including lower eyelids. And this is what I call structural complexity. It covers the cartoony side of the spectrum between the realistic side of the spectrum, and in between you have all the different cartoon styles. Somewhere down the line you have anime, and then you have Simpsons, and you have Family Guy, and you have something else, and you have Ed, Ed and Eddie, or I don't even know. Like there are some very cool hybrid styles between realistic and anime, and they are very elegant and very stylized, but they have a high amount of accuracy and complexity in structure. And that is amazing. I love this. Like it's awesome. I still enjoy the cartoony side of the spectrum because it is easy to, let's say, draw something very simple and just make it look weird and make it look like something awkward or like rare, rare. Like it's stupid, it's simple, and I still enjoy doing it. So anyway, like the 1 and the 2 brackets, they can change in length, and the other thing is they can change in angle. For example, when the face is looking down more, and I would use the same structure for the face. Usually the face shape itself would change when the face is actually looking down or up. So for the sake of helping my brain to just eat the information step by step, I keep things the same, and I only manipulate 1 or 2 or 3 bits and pieces at a time, so that I can be familiar with everything at once, but I gain more XP and more familiarity with certain aspects, and including this one. This was my first. And then there was the space between the eye and the eyebrow. Depending on things, that would change, and depending on things, this can be very open and it can have a massive space between. It can be very short, and sometimes it's like it's fleek. It's not fleek. It's like very, very close together, so the space between changes. On top of this, I have similar changes by just saying I draw a different character, because the character in the DNA and genetics, it creates less space between eye and eyebrow because it is normal. And some humans have this very close. Otherwise, there is always the gap, because between eye and eyebrow, you have the eye bone and eye socket. So there is a natural space between. And that too is visible when you look at the profile. You have the eye, and then what you know is the eyebrow doesn't start there, and it never will, most of the time. Otherwise, you know there is a space, and that is indeed the eye socket. And it starts like that, and then it curves, and it has a nice arc. Then we can take this one and actually just rotate this around. If the face is looking down, this is what I see. I'm looking at it like this, right? And what I would see is the eyebrow looks like it's coming from the actual eye. It still makes sense. What I have to see is, or what I have to note is that the face is actually supposed to look down. That means the jaw, this would be short, and it would actually have a weird extension to give the impression. Otherwise, it can still vary. There's always a crazy amount of variation between shifting between style, or you have different rotation of the face. I don't even know. Like, just be creative. Where I can draw the eye like it is looking down, and I can extend the space between the eyebrow like this. It still creates something, and this is where again I have to create or manipulate my elements to then again know how to just make it work, make it look pleasing, make it look good, and then be more precise with I want to draw a face that is looking down this amount, and I have to place these things like in these areas so that you create certain characters, certain emotions, certain impressions, so certain looks of the face, etc., etc. When it comes to, I have these things, right? These two, 1 and 2. And then I have the black stuff. The black stuff is the pupil. And depending on things, I had to figure out how to actually place this. So, for more realistic impression, it goes between the two. It's like it starts at the 2 and there it's basically sitting and it doesn't really do much. For more cartoony, and this is where the black stuff actually becomes more bigger, it will intersect. This is the point. It will intersect with number 1. This is I look for the intersection for the 1 and I draw it specifically. I don't draw it from number 2, and this is like the intersection point. So just between knowing when I shift between realistic style or cartoon style, this is the placement that I have to vary. Like, I know small pupil, more realistic placement in the 2 bracket, in the 2 elements. And then if I go more realistic, of course, this entire thing is growing bigger, and I could basically take this and just scale it up, right? Eventually you will see that it does indeed intersect with the number 1, and I have a very similar effect, but it is definitely not realistic anymore. But it stays inside the main 1-2 structure, and I can basically make this more complex and then copy this, give it an eyebrow, give it some eyelashes, and then decide, do you want to have a small pupil for something more realistic, or do you actually want to have a bigger pupil for something more cartoony? And they both work. They both work. You can play around with basically, on top of this, change the angle of 1 and 2 and the length. This is basically keep 2 the same, change number 1, and then we can't really go with the small pupil anymore because it would look awkward. Otherwise, we had to close it off differently, and that's still awkward. So if the 1 goes bigger, the entire proportions change, and I know it's more suited for a bigger eye. Otherwise, I gotta drink more. I could change the entire proportions, where the entire eye is then again supposed to be more realistic. And I would definitely add the tear duct, a little bit shading for the eyeball, and this eye is a nice amount of realistic. It's not too realistic, it's still stylized. I don't really look for the precision and accuracy, but this is definitely working. This is like before I figure this out, I have to go through the grind to be really familiar, and even on like the subconscious, unconscious level. Like, your brain has to know what is affecting what and what is actually playing a role. And this is what you have from practicing from reference. If you've never seen an eye, you have to observe the eye very carefully. and then break down the structure so that you can manipulate the structure from imagination, and you know that this is what would happen if you rotate the face in this way, or you want to draw a face that is like 3/4 view, etc., etc. But you have certain things that change in weird ways, and still familiarity with this is required. So at first, before I can really know how to manipulate things, I have to know what kind of things do really play a role, and how do I have to manipulate them in which ways, so that it's like a weird kind of puzzle and combining things between these 1 and 2 brackets or 1, 2, 3s, changing angle and length, and then you can manipulate length and angle independently. You can then change the proportions by changing the pupil size or the eye size or the head scale. You can play around with the placement of eyebrow and so on and so forth, and you end up with basically, if you want to cover the entire spectrum between cartoon and realism, that is fine. Otherwise, you have just more realistic stuff, which makes it easier. Otherwise, you have an infinite amount of possible combinations, where you decide, do you want to draw realistic or do you want to draw cartoony? You can basically approach this like it's a 1 + 1 = 2. You have this thing and you combine it with the other thing equals realistic. If you combine it with something else, it's more cartoony. And all you really decide is how much realism do you need, how much cartooniness, or how much stylization you need. And everybody wants to find their own style. And in between, instead of this is like I have my own ways of drawing arts. And still, this is not entirely coming from me. I was influenced by comics such as Danger Girl, Witchblade, and that kind of stuff. And I love their eyes. I'm also influenced, like 10 years later, influenced by anime and manga and Asian style and more stylized stuff, more dynamic stuff, more non-realistic stuff. And I still love it. And then I look at it and I try to analyze how they build their things, what shapes do they use, how much shading, line weight, etc., etc. And still, it's like more or less a very creative way to get there is by experiment. And that too is the kind of grind. Like play around with certain elements, make eyes more straight, make them more flat, make them more go up, or make them whatever. Like usually you don't see it like this. What you see is like you take one face and you turn it into a finished piece of artwork, and you spend like 1 hour and it's finished. I grind it out so that I can, when I want to actually draw something and make a character, I can be very, very, very precise and ultimately follow myself. I can draw what I want to draw because I've learned and practiced and trained towards this. Instead of taking, there are a couple of really good faces, and every one of them could be a nice drawing that I can put in my portfolio, put on social media and share, and everybody would look at it and say, "Wow, you have a like and have a retweet," and you know. But I don't. So instead, I really want to go through to find out how the stuff really, really, really works down to the bone. Like down to the bone, you know? Then I chew the bone and I eat the bone and I poop the bone and then I eat the poop. So just to make sure I got everything, right? I got everything out of it. Everything out of it. Even though it takes time and I know when I'm done streaming, I definitely go fishing. Oh my god, as stupid as it sounds. What's up? Nothing's just a name. How's everybody doing? Maybe I should take a quick stretch break. Stretch. There's me. Standing, I'm ready to dive into the toilet. Yeah. I have no voice, no. So even like what I was explaining was about like this eye stuff and the 1-2s, and let's say looking at this face, right? And I have a 1-2 or 1-2-3 for the eye. I have something similar for the lower eyelid. I have similar things for the eye socket. I have similar 1, 2, 3s for basically the entire face. And the entire thing is it's like built from 15 1, 1, 2, 3s, where I have a simple structure that is made up from 2 lines. Between is an angle. Maybe it's a third line, another angle between, and that is how I went through all this analysis. Because at all times, whatever is happening in terms of the faces looking left, the faces looking right, you can say what is happening to the line. The line being the thing that you put on paper, it comes out of your pencil. You're not painting. This comes out of my pencil. Like I drew this thing to draw the face, right? And you can always see these lines. If the face, like the general face structure, is being manipulated and rotated in space, if you observe this thing from a different point of view, this line, any of these 1, 2, 3s will change. And if you break this down very carefully, you end up with knowing that all of this crazy stuff, like as hard and difficult as it is, can be trained and practiced by manipulating this friend. This guy. He's the guy. He's the guy. Because this thing it's a 3D thing. It's made up from 1, 2, 3 planes. Every plane is made out of 4 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. Between you have these angles, right? And then you have 2 parallel lines per axis, right? This is like the plane is a 2D plane in a 3D space. So you have at least X and Y space. This is your X and this is your Y. So if I look at this angle very carefully, I can say this is horizontal, this is vertical, so my angle is like what, 15, 20 degrees? If I use a different angle like this, and then I can still manipulate the entire plane to then draw a different box. So still, the change that happens to the box is represented in these lines. And now we can, like, looking at it differently, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3 lines. And these are the same, right? All you need is this, because this guy goes over there and over there. The other guys go over there and over there, and they are the same. They're clones. They're clones. They're total clones. So for the normal space box, you have maybe 1 plane, but they have similar elements, right? This one is the same. They are parallel. They are the same. So when you draw the first line, know in which direction you want to move, and then you copy the first line, copy the second line, and you have your first plane. And still, it starts with the 1, it starts with the 2. If I continue it this way, and this way I draw the box. It looks weird. If I keep these 2 and then draw my pupil, I still have something entirely different. Magic. And it still has the same kind of thing. The thing when I think about it this way is that as 2-dimensionally as this can be, these 2 lines automatically translate to a plane that is a box. It is a box. It is a box. Don't tell me this is not a box. It's totally a box. 3D-ness. My butt. What's up, plans? How things? Thank you for the biddies. What's up, Central? How things? Shoo. So, in the beginning, drawing like this, it may not be very appealing, but understand that it's like you help your brain. And you may have no idea how much you actually help your brain. In the end, you will be, once you're familiar with this and just slowly being able to know where these things have to go, so that when you draw this, you can say, this is my chin, and these 2 lines go up, this goes up, this goes up, and you know the structure. I can identify this as basically a square. every line is bent, right? So it's again, I practice these kind of things so much. And usually you go in and draw something round, and it's hard to identify where's what because of proportions. This is where I break this down into this one, this one, this one, which is still a 1 and a 1 and a 2, basically the other way around. This is the 1, this is 2 and 2, and this goes up is the 3. 3 is the jawbone. This is where the ear goes. This goes up for the temple and the side of the head, and then you have basically the dome of the skull. I simplify. One goes up, one goes across, one goes down. And usually I give this a little bit of curve, and I try to structurize this to have a very, very, very simple thing. This is like very simple, but it represents highly complex stuff, things. Just like the circle has 360 degrees. That is one plane, one square plane per degree, right? It's like 180 per half, 90 for the quarter things. That means 90 go around. The box has 4 sides. So a circle with 360 degrees has 360 sides. A circle with 4 sides is a square. I deconstructed this the other day. So the half circle, 180 degrees, simplified to the most, is this. It is cut into half. You can't really flatten it out in a complete flat plane, which is this, but there's nothing in there. So you take this and you move it up. You cut this into 2 and you move it into place so that you can subdivide this one. And then again, you take this one, move it up a notch, and you have it more round. You take this one, move it up. If you keep this going, there is a word for this kind of geometric form. I go from 0 complexity to full complexity in a single swoop. So if I continue this down, I again have the square. I take this, I move this along, and I simplify this, right? And there is a word for these geometric structures. Dodecahedron, motate, something, tessellation, potato, cahedron. Yeah, I don't know the words. So, and still, I want to learn how to do this, but I can structurize this in a simplified geometric way that makes it easier to basically to determine what is my structure actually doing in the entire complexity. Still, it's weird. I'm doing weird things. Weird things. So still, I know I have my structure and it has to be subdivided into all of these things. So instead of doing like all of these hard angles, of course I could just do this. But when I do this, I still know it is subdivided into these weird angles. So the most complex curve is still broken down into very simple bits and pieces, and these can be connected with a simple line. And again, going from 0 complexity, the most simple, hard-angled, hard-structured something, towards full complexity. And this is being the curve. The curve is always 100% complex. This is not a curve. And you can basically see where it's covering XY space. This is what you can see. You can't see where the one plane begins, where the other plane ends. And I structurize it to this because it is also covering XYZ space. When I have this, and you can say this is just like the arc for my eyeball, right? But I'm already drawing it in such a way that it is so significant in my brain, right? And it tells me there is a box. The box is 3D. This kind of thing is not 3-dimensional because there's nothing that tells my brain this is supposed to be 3D. But it is covering at certain points of this curve. The curve is progressing through XYZ space. And this is what I have to identify. And this is where I say this is X, this is Z, and this is Y. Because this is going up in space, this is going into the depth, and this is going across. When I then look at the weird looking curves that I could draw, I can identify where it can actually go into the space or where it doesn't. So that, like, from this point to this point, I already have this weird looking potato, right? And it's definitely like a cylindrical thing. And it wasn't there before, so there is now the interpretation of this thing actually being more three-dimensional because I give the brain the means to interpret the difference between the 2D curve and the now visualized 3D structure. And again, it's like practice, right? And still, this is crazy, right? This is crazy. I know it is always, I draw on a surface, so it's supposed to be flat. But there is something in there where it is translating to a more three-dimensional structure. And this is what I trained for so long. Instead of, again, like looking at just how to draw faces, how to draw eyes, I had to identify how to actually make it look like, wow, you know? And this is the magic. And it's like so weird. And it does indeed, it's like deciphering how to draw in 3D. In my brain, I operate in 3D space because I have to. The things that I draw, they are 3D. So I have to, when I draw, identify, am I covering 2D space or do I actually progress through X, Y, Z? Instead of just, oh yeah, I draw, so I just draw like whatever and it looks flat. So when I then do the painting and I make light and shade, I will have this be 3D. But no, I want to know the form. Like revere the form by geometry instead of light and shade. In XYZ space, in perspective, in distortion, in awesomeness, in sausages, in bacon wrapped pizza, fungi, elephants. Yeah. It's like actually making sense of so much, even in my own brain. Like the magic unfolds. Somewhere down the line it is. Somewhere down the line it is. And I know many people can actually get there, but still it is like actually thinking into the 3D space. And so that you have your canvas. When I have my canvas and it is completely empty, this is 3D space. But you don't really see it because there's nothing there that visualizes this. And then I draw a curve. And I know it is progressing through XYZ space. But there's nothing telling my brain this is 3D, so it has to be two-dimensional because my canvas is two-dimensional. What my brain immediately did was this. Staircase. It's like the easiest way to just make this curve 3D. And then I can imply there is space between these compartments. There's no more space between these. So the line or the curve actually lines up with this. But over there it stands away, and then it definitely stands away even more. So the brain needs these things to really identify what is going on. And again, this is, in a way, this is complex stuff. And for my brain, it is so easy to find at least one working interpretation so that I can just identify, categorize, analyze, dissect, continue to study if necessary. And again, the space is like, it's like so weird because the manipulation of everything is like, whoa, you know? So where do I really go? It's like so weird. And then from the top, right? It's like, oh, this is awesome. There's an elephant. It's like a very tooty elephant. In there. Toot toot. So let's draw the elephant. So again, I go with this curve, right? And I want to do this. But I want to imply the perspective of another ribbon, and then I basically go back. And still, what is happening in between? And I can still manipulate the structure in such weird ways where the brain has to follow at least one interpretation. And I'm forcing the brain to perceive a flat wall that is then curved into, like, this is all a flat wall, like it belongs to a cube. And you can see, this is my angle, there's my plane, this would be my box, and these are identical. I'm hatching along this way. This is the plane. And then I'm folding step by step by step by step, and your brain can't really escape this, right? I'm hatching, 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 hatching. I'm moving along, I'm changing direction, I'm moving along, and then I'm changing angle. So something is definitely happening to the surface that I'm moving. And then I'm going this way and I'm changing angle again. Something is definitely happening in 3D space. I'm coming from a 3D space that is the box. And something is happening to this plane in space. Anyway. So to really make sense of this, the brain has to have some kind of data, some kind of information to make, like, to really know what is going on in space. Or on, it's like on your canvas, the brain requires some kind of data to determine the 3Dness of things. Just like I have the normal curve, and I want to interpret the 3Dness, and I would draw this, right, to make it look like there is a plane that attaches to a box. All I really draw is the plane. I know it is part of the box, and then I have to continue carefully to obey the perspective, to really show this is going up and it's going down, and I can see this plane from the top. I see this plane from the bottom. In between there is the change, because my eye level is somewhere in this place. I can't really see this from the top, but I still see it. Then there's this stuff going on where something else could happen. So this could go there, then it goes there. So it curves, it goes back, and then it like changes. And if I continue this down, I can actually pull it forward. If I then go bigger, you still get the impression that it's coming forward in space. It's getting closer to you because of the perspective change. If I stop right there and then do this, it suddenly begins to make sense. All I really do is interpret the space between this plane and this plane, which is ultimately yada yada yada. You take this point, you draw a box. That is in perspective. Draw a normal box. Any box is in perspective. Perspective does not equal perspective distortion. Don't get it wrong. And you take this point and you draw a box. Now figure out what do you have to do in between to really connect this plane with this plane. In perspective, in space, in whatever comes to your brain. So it's like holy cow. If you take a stick in your hand, this is you, take a stick, and then if you have a ribbon, right, and there is this Olympic discipline where people have these ribbons and they swing them around, right, do it like a whip, right, and you have a curve that is generated from the stick, and it's like, wow, it goes through space, right? It's the same thing. It's the same dynamic principle. If I have a plane that goes off course because it's like crashing down, it has this kind of appearance. It may look different because you would expect this thing to be upside down, like this, right? It curves and curves and twists and then it crashes, right? And still, I know there is a trail, and this is the trail of the ribbon, the magic ribbon, and I can. It's like I can fold the ribbon basically step by step, and I can decide, do I want to see it on the inside or do I want to see it on the outside? And all I really got to do is change the interpretation. It's like I know I see it from the inside, and then it goes back. So there's my ribbon, and then I want to twist it. So I go there, and then it comes back on the back because it has to do this. Like physically, logically, it can happen like this, and it looks, in my brain, it looks logical. And then this happens, right? It comes from two lines, it intersects into one, and basically where it looks like it doesn't exist anymore, but it still comes back on the other side. I can still change this and fold the form, basically fold the ribbon to the other side. And say I'm seeing the bottom. It's like a loop. It's not really a loop, but it definitely does something. And then it just goes back into this flat wall. And you can identify the twist between this angle, they're all changing until they hit this place. And then just continue. Magic. So there it comes back, and then it folds, and then it comes back on the inside. And then it goes back. It's like a shoelace. So I'm identifying what the surface could do, possibly do, by this is my angle. I'm moving it along this direction. If I change my angle, the surface is physically changing. The actual 3D surface that I'm creating is physically changing if I change my angle. It's weird, right? You gotta try this yourself, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. So again, I have the row, right? It does something entirely different, right? So still, if I come in like this is my base angle, and I can actually take it this way, and then change angles. And I have to do this because I want to portray this is like going from a flat surface into a straight surface. This is my wall. This is my flat surface. This is the top plane of the box. This is the side plane of the box. And there's the transition, right? Side plane. And then I fold it. This. You can physically fold paper this way, right? Fold it over. Because you have a thickness, like a width or depth, the thickness has to come back kind of on the other side to really make sense of things. Sometimes I get this wrong, but still, this is the one side that then folds over, and then it has to come back to make it look like I see it from the side, and I have to run this through. And it can happen. Like I can take a ribbon and just fold it like this. It's more or less like a roller coaster, right? And then from this point we can still go around, go anywhere, and continue this. And I continue this to be like the flat wall. And then it folds over. And then if I do this, right, I just have it be bigger, but I'm also changing this back into the top plane. And then again, if I change the angle again, and if I then transition to the inside, you get the idea that there is a change between the flat planes and then the top planes. And they are still curving down into the spiral. Magic. This is the principle. You always like between every once in a while lines, you have a plane that connects to a box. The thing is, this is a manipulation of space and form. Usually there is a very big misunderstanding when it comes to perspective. Don't assume it means distortion. Perspective distortion is not equal distortion. Everything and everything is always in perspective. Everything and anything is not always being distorted. Even though it's like a difference between the interpretation of space, right? So there's always perspective. But the one box has more distortion than the other. They are the same box, but they are seen with a different lens. That is why the distance, there is actual distortion happening. The perspective is the same. They are seen from the top. You are elevated. Your eye level horizon is this. You are seeing it from the top. It is 45 degrees, like a 3/4 view offset to your left or to your right. That is like, it's like this is you sitting on your desk, on your chair. take a box, put it on your desk, move it to your left or to your right, and then rotate it 45 degrees. It is in perspective. It always will be. The distortion is actually showing the distance. It is still in a very similar perspective, but there's more distortion. And then again, if I don't make this too small, but keep it the same size, like if this line is the same size like this line, there's no space, no distortion. The perspective is still maintained, and many are confused by this. So drawing a people person or a car, like it's you can't really draw a thing outside of perspective. You can't draw a thing without distortion. That I can't do by just doing this. There's a square. There's no space. So you can say you see it from the top. You are flying over a football-sized field square. We are indeed in the plane. We can spit down. We shouldn't. So it's like, yeah. Anyway, magic. So, magic. Am I still making sense? Yes, I am building them from stripes. They are fairly complex stripes. They are called contours, and they definitely change frequently. But they are set up like these ribbons. It's like manipulating the plane between the two lines. When I draw a box, and this is like I observe my own approach in what line I draw for the box. The first line is direction. The first line is also in perspective because it has an angle. It's weird, right? So I would do this one and this one and this one. So this is always my first line. This can be my second. And this is already telling me the direction and the orientation. It can be this, and it could be this. This is a flat plane. It's a straight plane. This is the flat plane. This is the straight plane. I hope I'm writing this correct. Straight. Just yes, correct. Oh, the dyslexia. So, and even these words, they help me identify what I see and where I see it. Because when you look at your desk, whatever you look at, you see two planes. And maybe you see a third plane, which is the front. These are all the planes that you can see from any object, like the boxes. If I see a cardboard box, like I have boxes with office stuff, I see the side plane, which is the straight one, and I see the front plane. And depending on the perspective, I see not the I don't see the top one. So the first line that I draw is already in perspective. It is not being distorted. You can't distort the plane, but it's in perspective. Just like the plane and this box are logically in perspective. There's no distortion going on. If I do this, these are the two lines that I work with. If they don't have the same angle, meaning they are not parallel, I have this. These 2 points are then connected, and these 2 points are connected. Because I have a size decrease, that means it is being distorted in space. Because physically and realistically, when things are moving back into space in distance, they become smaller. And that is visualized with the vanishing point. I don't draw it because this line, my initial line, and the secondary line, these two, they build the relationship, and they are arrows. They are pointing. They are literally pointing to the vanishing point. Always, 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 always. If you have no distortion, these lines remain parallel until infinity and eternity meets them, right? They will never meet. So if this guy is then not at the same angle, miraculously, fantastically, they meet. And therefore this is the vanishing point. I don't need to draw this. right? Draw the point to then draw two lines facing towards the point to then do this. This is like perspective grid kind of bullshit. Because these two lines, the draw box, the two lines of the box, they will always, they have to, like these two ones. If they don't, if they remain parallel, no vanishing point. How could there be? Right? If I take this one and this one, they will meet. Vanishing point. It's like, how can people get this wrong? But they don't even get it wrong because they look at vanishing points in perspective grids. And I have to say, how, right? I have opinions. And I have to call it bullshit. Like, for real. Right? What they tell you to do is like, you have your square, you make this and you make this, and then you have your grid, right? You do your draw. Oh my god, I can't even be serious, right? You draw your grid, right? And then you draw your box, right? Wow, box, wow, right? And then you like draw your desk and you draw your bed and you draw it all on the grid. Like, holy shit. Instead of realizing that between these lines that make the plane is a relationship that has to meet, because all of these lines, right? All of these things, right? Like these ones, where do they go but to the vanishing point? They have to. And still, if there is nothing going there, there is no vanishing point. So I can just draw two arrows, right? When I connect these end lines, and I keep in mind that it's supposed to be a square, I have a plane in 1 point perspective distortion. It is being distorted because this is the big one, this is the small one. And if I do this one and I move it over there and then I keep it small and I connect these guys, what do I have? Right? Grid brush, oh my god, please. It's like in the time that we are in, we have software that is covering up the lack of knowledge, which is completely fine, right? If you don't want to learn, get the software. It makes grids, it makes perspective grids, and like all of this magic. If that is fine for you, like, right? Oh my god. Like, I have too many aspirations. Like, I want to be too fucking good to rely on that kind of stuff. And in a way, learning perspective is a fucking hard thing to learn. And it is not something that many people would go through. So they want to make art, so they use the software, which is fine. And I still stand there like, potential, potential. You got to realize your potential. If you just like, fine, if you want to go play, then go play. There's the difference between, you can make movies on your vlog and on your blog with your camcorder and be happy. If you have your aspirations, and if you want to show yourself and show the world how far you can get, you will kick some fucking ass, right? You will go to all the necessary places to like go to where your skills are being utilized, where you can actually express things. And I don't want to say Hollywood, but if you want to go to Hollywood, go to Hollywood. Like, it's like a cliche, right? Like, people want to go to Vegas to be models, they go to Hollywood to be an actress, right? And you have all of these people, and all of these people, they go there to like fulfill their dreams and such. They at least try, right? At least they try. But when it comes to art, you can use the grids and use the reference. Use all of this kind of stuff that keeps you away from understanding things, but it helps you along by doing what you want to do, which is art. It's a weird kind of conundrum. It's a pickle. It's a cucumber. It's not a zucchini. It's definitely a pickle. There is a kind of where you can use the grids to learn, yes, and that is how they should be used. I didn't use them because I wanted other things, and still don't rely on it. Like, actually give it some thought. And most people don't. That is just it. It's not even. It's the same thing in general. Like, people are not always the smartest, including me. That said, right? Like, What you see right now is the encumbrance of pickles over 10 years. I had to spend a lot of time with myself and my own thick-headedness, with my own dull brain that wanted to do it this way and not do it any other way. I was influenced by no opinion of no artist that told me to do it any other way, so I just followed my own brain. And I practiced to follow my own advice. It's sometimes good, sometimes bad, but still, um, I was very patient, very careful, and I still didn't always believe everything my brain was telling me, because over time I learned that as well, that it doesn't matter what your brain and your mind is telling you. It is the proof that you acquire that actually gives the substance to what your brain and your mind is telling me. So if my mind and my brain is telling me that I got the breakthroughs and I'm actually improving my skill, it doesn't matter if I believe it, it doesn't matter if I think it. I have to put it on paper and actually show myself, visualize by myself in front of my eyes, done with my own hand, that I know how this works and I got it, right? And that means whatever took me like 20 minutes before can only take 3 minutes. That is understanding covering the bridge, and that is like fundamental kind of understanding that actually thrives the speed. It creates the speed, because why would you do it slow when you actually know how to do it correct and right? And that means fast. It's not like I'm drawing very slow because why would I do this, right? It's like there's no reason for me to do it this way. And I can still be like, okay, it goes down, let's see very carefully, and like, okay, I'm very, very careful. It's like, why would I do it this way, you know? And still, I have done it so many times that it basically, it goes like this, right? And I have to maintain my symmetry. I have to maintain my main axis so the fade's looking straight. And it goes like so quick. And I know what I'm doing. That is why it goes so quick. Otherwise, it wouldn't go so quick. And I don't need to guess for the proportions. I can wing it, and I know how to wing it precisely or accurately to some degree. And it won't always be the best, but I can create something that definitely would prove myself that to some degree I know what I'm doing without having to struggle. It's not like I'm not making mistakes on purpose. I'm just being quick. And still, if I want to have more precision, I slow this down, then it turns into 5. Right? It may turn into 1, and still, gotta have it on paper. Marshall Woodruff stuff perspective? No, I have not watched any kind of. I did watch one of those, and I did it to know what it is all about. And yeah, let's say the one I don't really know which I watched. Um, it was some online course. It was not new. It was let's say it was from the late 90s, early 2000s. And that only judging by the camera image quality and by what the teacher was wearing. Like, it was not recorded after 2010. That is definitely the case. So it could have actually been recorded with the VHS tapes, because it was weird quality. So anyway, it was fairly good. It was very precise, and still, um, I think like fundamentally, the fundamental step. Yeah, I can't really assume. I can't really assume they would know this, because it is my fundamental basic step. It is again one more time really looking away from the conventional grid kind of stuff to basically put the emphasis on how the drawing works. Because when we draw, we work with via or by representation. When I draw a line like this one, it is representing my ear. It is a very simple kind of thing that represents a very highly complex structure. So when you talk about perspective and depth, it is not about grids, it is not about anything. It is about how does it represent on paper. What do you need to put on paper to describe perspective and depth and distance and stuff and things. It's not about the grids, and that is the flaw. It never is about the grid, but the thing is that is the fundamental thing as I see it. When things are in space, they shrink in size. And when I want to describe the depth of this square, all I do is I have these two lines, 1 and 2, and one has to become smaller and is then connected with 2. And that means the lines on the side, they form this relationship that connects to the vanishing point. That means there is a vanishing point. That means there is space and depth. And now I have a 2-point vanishing point box in like 30 seconds. And people have to draw grids because like, bruh, I don't get it. But still, this is my main box. If I fold the box into space and depth and distance, then one line has to shrink because it goes further away from me, and I'm talking very slow right now. So that is how I see it, and that makes sense. If it comes forward, it goes bigger. Look at this, right? This goes bigger. All I really do is I keep these lines going, and they go bigger, like they should. And then this goes down because they go smaller. This line, Bob, is small Bob because it is in the depth and in the distance. If I have a third Bob and I do this, very small, and I connect these, I have a third plane. I have now, this is one plane, this is the second plane, this is the third plane. And what I do is I have this box, this is my Bob, and I have the first plane that goes down. This is number 2. The one plane basically continues to go forward. This is the plane number 1. This arrow is actually pointing on this line like this, and there's my 1. I'm drawing in space. Plane number 3 is very crazy difficult because it goes back in space. And I have no idea how long it is. It could actually be very, very, very long. But that is the third plane. And I could actually, that too is a kind of tricky thing. I mix. There's something in the perspective of my brain thinking that I can't visualize the weird looking plane. There it goes, kind of. But these are the 3 planes. And they all exist in space. They all have different independent vanishing points. And again, the fundamentalness of this is it goes back, it is small. It goes big in front. I connect these. And again, Bob and Jeff form the relationship. They point towards it. These are arrows, literally pointing to the vanishing point. If I do this, and I remove this angle state, I kill the relationship to where they no longer face towards the same point. I have a normal square. Now look, magic. I take this, I select it, and I'm doing the same thing, and I'm distorting it towards the vanishing point. The front line is big. The other line is then again small, and that is what we observe in reality. This is so easy. Drawing in perspective is not hard. Understanding distortion is not hard. Drawing crazy things, that is the hard thing because they are complex. And there are a couple of things that have to be observed when you actually want to draw in perspective. But still, these things, they can be practiced. By understanding, you don't always have to distort because distortion and vanishing points make it more difficult. Understand how to layer things in front of your face so that you have the one box like this and another box where you see less of the top plane. And you have a third box where you see, no, my god, the top line is gone. And then you have another box that you suddenly see from the bottom. That is perspective change because you see a lot from this. You see less from this. You see none of this. And then you suddenly see something else. That is perspective change. And it does indeed continue because from this box, I have this plane. And then it goes down, right? And still it can go down, and it can go down, and continue to go down. It might as well continue this way. But this is the perspective change. And that is what has to be understood because this can be my face of my people. And like portraying people in space and perspective and stuff, it starts with understanding how the perspective, not how to distortion. There's a difference. There's a very big difference. So drawing at first it may seem weird, but actually understanding how the perspective works first over the distortion, I couldn't have done it any other way. Because the perspective does not equal distortion. That is basically the idea. So drawing ugly things, drawing stupid things at first is perfectly fine. And I'm trying to keep the perspective consistent because is this angle. It basically is the same. It repeats through all elements. This angle. It repeats. It changes in size because my objects are changing. And these are the same. It's like we did this before, right? We have these three things. We copy this one goes there, this is there, there, there. We have this one there, and there, there. If I keep this going, I create the same perspective for all elements. I have no distortion going on. I can go in space freely, not like this. Not like this indeed, but I am traversing into XYZ. I am erasing the distortion. There's no distortion at first because it makes it so much more difficult. So I take it apart because it's easier to learn. Science. The distortion is the interpretation of depth. It is not the interpretation of angle of observation. Angle of observation sounds weird. My accent. So angle of observation is basically when we have our eyes. This is us right now, and we take any kind of imaginary box where we have food in, or shoes, or candy, and we hold it in front of our eyes. So this is my box, and these are my eyes. I do not see the top plane. I can do this with my desk. If I then move my eyes above this edge, what would I see? But I would see the top plane. And I would see the top plane basically in perspective and depth. What I don't see is like this. Because I know between point A and point B, for example, my desk, this is the depth that I want to interpret. And that means that Bob, the big Bob line, big one, is big. And Jeff line in the back, what does Jeff have to do? Tell me, guys. So I'm testing if you're paying attention. What is happening to Jeff if he's in depth in space? $7,500 indeed. What's up, Xenon? How things? Did you paste the thing? Something? Oh yeah, I see it. Okay, I can do my responsibilities in a second. So what is happening to Jeff? Jeff close, Jeff big. Almost. Jeff far, Jeff small. There we go. There we go. There we go. Jeff is far, Jeff goes small. That is correct. So we go away from like this kind of box, but we know Bob is big, Jeff is far, so Jeff is small. And that means this. Our eye level is now above the box. Above our Bob line. Bob. This is perspective. If I then again move my eyes back down, I would not see the line, and all I really have is again just Bob. We can actually like take a box and just move it around in front of your face, like super stupid. You can take a toilet paper roll, right? It has these two rings inside. So again, my eye level, and this is what you have to identify your eye level being above. This is why you see the top. If your eye level is aligned like this, you can't even make out this to be curved. All you would see is this, and then it goes down because it looks like a square. If you move your eyes above, right, it's like a super logic. You see it. It makes sense, right? This is perspective. How would you distort the circle? It's still a tricky thing, but it makes sense. And that is how I identify things. When I look at reference, I identify eye level horizon. Do I see the head from the top? That is this box. If I don't see the top, it would look different. So this angle, from this point going down, I have to, from this point, go up. Because I can't see the top plane anymore. That means I see the box, maybe like this, where I see the bottom plane. Otherwise, here's the magic. Eye level horizon. If I do this, What does it mean? How could the bottom line be completely flat? What does it mean to my eye level horizon? Is my eye level horizon aligned with the ground? Question mark. Question mark. Is it aligned? I see the heads. I see them. Open version. I will do it after the boxes. A couple of minutes. So technically my eyes are aligned. Now here comes another part, and this is like how I think, and I'm not even thinking about vanishing points, like the point itself or any sort of grid. I look for what is happening to my bobs and their relationship in angles, and I'm looking at my jeffs, right? Let's say all of these are parallel, so this is a bob, this is a jeff. They can mix around, so you have bob on jeff and jeff on bob. So this is a bob and this is a jeff. These two form the relationship just like these two form them. So look for what you have and look for what you need, because this guy needs a friend, and then this guy needs his other friend. When I place them on the horizon, they are still there. So there's my box. Bob, Jeff, Bob, Jeff, Bob, Jeff. Look for the relationship they are in, because what you see, these guys, parallel, no distortion. If you look at the other Bob than Jeff, this is the logic, right? I elongate these lines, they will meet. Therefore distortion. Angle, right? Angle equals distortion. It's so weird. So again, flat ground, right? Flat ground, and then again, look, right? All I really do is I don't make it flat. From this point, I draw the line down to this point, because this is the point I'm looking for. And now again, I have my bobs and my jeffs, and suddenly they build the relationship that didn't exist before. And then again, I draw this down and this up, and I have another relationship between these guys, because suddenly I have 2 points of vanishingness. Like out of nothing, out of changing a line from this to this. Because these two, they're arrows, they're my bobs and jeffs, and I can be like, holy shit, vanishing point. Holy shit, vanishing point. Because bob is shrinking in size. Holy shit, that means this bob is changing angle from this square plane. If I take this, grab it with my hand, and throw it into the distance, it has to shrink. It looks like this. And this is a book, if you guys are wondering. There's my book. And it's a book. It has a cover. Book, right? And you can have all of these pages indicating where they go. And every one of those could be your bobs and your jeffs, right? And then suddenly you can indicate the perspective by knowing that this, no distortion. If you repeat this with these 2 lines, and you say, holy shit, this goes small, and there's your vanishing point, there's your perspective. And ultimately, it doesn't always have to make sense, but there's your one box, there's your second box. Maybe this would definitely be different, but the principle is the same. Boo. Oh my goodness. Thank you, dyslexia. I love it. Holy shit. Nobody saw nothing. The boobs. The boobs books. The book of boobs. Yeah. This is the fundamentalness of how I understand perspective. Like, I look for how the space is actually represented. Why do I need to think about vanishing points? They are created, they are made. I don't need to turn them in so that I can build my box. My box is what I manipulate, and I have my bobs and my jeffs. You have 2 bobs and jeffs per plane. They build the relationship. If they do this, they have a vanishing point, and therefore you have your 1 point. It's like every line you draw is an arrow. Every line you draw points at their own vanishing point. If you have 2 of those, and you say, there's your square, there's your vanishing point, they don't vanish, so there's nothing going on. And the magic really happens when you do this, and then this rotates, so eventually they meet, right? They will align on this thing together like friends. And suddenly there's a vanishing point. As this thing goes smaller over the distance, it shrinks in size. Look at it. Look at it go small. And then I can say there's my one box, there's a second box, and there all I really draw is a plane, right? But it still goes small into the distance. Magic. It's like so weird. So weird. Yes, let me take a look. Copy image. Okay. Zinon, do you have any more specific questions? And I think I will take a break real quick. Small candy break, and then I will do the head. My belly is grumbling, and I've not any pretty faces on. Yeah, okay, quick, very quick candy break, and I will do the heads. Can I put this in? There's this one. Okay, so I have it. If you have any specific questions, any more about any specific head in particular, definitely let me know. Is there? Okay, be right back. I definitely have to get candy. I bought some. I bought some today. The heads that you collected, are there any sort of particular or just the most recent ones? Okay, I see there's early ones. Like some of them probably, yeah, I see some of them have some mistakes. Some of them they're okay, I'm okay. That's okay, let's see. Yes, okay, my belly's grumbling. I will be right back. I will be right back.